Hello, my name is Eric Sieben, and I am one of the pastors at the Village Church. The following podcast is a ministry of the Village Church. We hope that it inspires you, that it draws you closer to Jesus, and it opens your eyes to the possibilities of living in the kingdom. Enjoy, and God bless.
All right, let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you for this community. Thank you for this moment in time when we can worship you, when we can just slow down and think about what you are inviting us into, to ponder your vastness, and to just look at what might be the next step that you're inviting us into. And so we ask that we would be open to that, and we ask all of that in your name, Jesus. Amen. All right, to open up, I just have a quick story to tell you. In 1997, long time ago, I was doing college ministry, and at one of the college ministry services, so on a Friday night, my mentor, Pastor Mark, who married Sue and I, was we got there, and there's the music, and he starts talking, and I see a bowl of water and a towel, and he starts talking about foot washing and honoring your leaders. And let me just pause there and tell you about my ingrown toenail. So at the time, in 1997, I was struggling with an ingrown toenail. And, it was very frustrating to me. And thank you very much. And I see the water, I see the towel, and he's starting to talk about honoring leaders. And he's really kind of leaning towards, it's going to be me who's getting my feet washed. And so as he's talking about it, I'm like, he hasn't called me up yet, so I'm leaving. So I'll go to the bathroom. So I sneak off to the bathroom, and I don't return. So they have to send an emissary to get me. Now, he's not here, but when I was telling the story this morning, I remember who the emissary was, because I had actually just met Keith. I'd maybe not even known him for 6 months. And Keith was the emissary. And I remember him saying, "Everything okay in there, Eric?" Here's the thing. I don't remember getting my feet washed. I have completely blacked that out. Right? So with that story in mind, image is everything. Andre Agassi. Everybody know who Andre is? He's a tennis player. He has this comes from a commercial he did for Canon or Nikon a while back. Image is everything. Now, it might strike you as, no, that can't be true. Image can't be everything. But guess what? Image is everything. Image is everything. And because image is everything, we struggle to let go. We struggle to say no, and we struggle to grow. Give me a hand for how well I did on my rhetorical statements. I want you to remember this. We struggle to let go, we struggle to say no, and we struggle to grow because image is everything. We struggle to let go of control. We struggle to say no to the things that are addicting and benefit us but aren't good for us. And therefore, our spiritual growth is stunted. So what do I mean when I say image is everything and it has these consequences? Well, I'm talking about self-image. Your self-image plays a crucial role in shaping the options you perceive as available to you in various circumstances. Let me repeat this. Your self-image plays a crucial role in shaping the options you perceive as available to you in various circumstances. Self-image are the labels that you give yourself and the stories that are attached to those labels. Self-image, the older you are, the more layered it is. You've had many, many years of people to tell you who you are, experiences to tell you who you are, labels to be put on you, you telling the story of those labels, you owning some of them. Right? And so they limit your options. So let me give you a very surface level example of this. Let's talk about introverts and extroverts. Right? So introverted people, maybe when you were a little kid, you were told that you were shy or you felt like you were shy. Right? And then you were told you're an introvert. And introverts have a little story attached to them. When they're around people, they need a long time to recharge, right? So they tell that story to themselves. So they're introverted. They need to recover from hanging out with people. They don't like to be in big groups. That's part of the story. And they like little small groups. That's where their friendship structure is, right? So when the introverted person walks in to a group of people, so walks in this evening, they have a set of options for what they can do, right? And it isn't the extroverted options, right? So they might think, oh, I'm going to go sit in the corner, or I'm going to go find one person and sit and talk to them. Right? They have a certain set of choices based on a label, based on a story. And if you're an extrovert, maybe when you were little, you were just the life of the party and people kept telling you you were funny and you were extroverted. And then what's the story for an extrovert? Well, the story for an extrovert is that they get energy from people, right? That's where they recharge. If they spend too long by themselves, they're crazy, right? They need to be with people, right? Because they're extroverted. You see, there's a whole narrative attached to a label, and so they have a certain set of choices available to them when they come in here. In order for them to enjoy themselves, they've got to go talk to people. They've got to tell us a few jokes. They want to be around the action. They want to hear people's stories. What's not available for them, in their mind, is to go sit in the corner and not talk to anybody and not look anybody in the eye. That's not an option. Now, I understand that these are very surface level examples of label for self-image, because I also understand that our self-image is deeply layered and very complex. But I just want you to understand that what you believe about yourself, the pictures you have, and the words that are attached to them dictate choices and beliefs you have and influence your ability to let go, your ability to say no to things that aren't good for you, and your ability to grow as a human being in Christ. Now, the beauty of being a follower of Jesus is that Jesus is about image deconstruction and reconstruction. Jesus is about deconstructing who you believe you are and reconstructing you into something else that that changes the options, changes the choices you have. In places where you feel powerless, in places where you feel afraid, in places where you long for control, Jesus begins to change the choices you might have there. And that changes everything. Now, with that idea, I would like to ask you today to kind of wrestle with this question. What part of your self-image, your constructed understanding of who you are, is Jesus inviting you to rethink or deconstruct? Maybe a clue to figuring that stuff out is, where are places where I feel like I need to have control? Where are the places that I feel powerless to stop doing things I don't want to do? Okay? Because I think those are the places where Jesus is looking to help you rethink who you are and what's available to you. So, as we think about that, today, we are in the Gospel of John chapter 13. So if you have a black Bible in front of you, I don't know what page it is on. I did not check. You can go there. Or if you have your handy little phone, you can look up John chapter 13. But John chapter 1 to chapter 12 has been almost 2.5 years, 3 years, and it is lots of action-packed stories. Lots of crazy stuff what we've been covering. You know, people are getting raised from the dead. People are seeing. Jesus is angering everybody. He's being a Jedi. There's so much stuff happening from chapter 1 to 12. And then all of a sudden, chapter 13, Jesus leaves his public ministry, and it's chapter 13 to chapter 19 is 24 hours. And Jesus talks a lot. If you have a red letter Bible, it's all red letters. because Jesus is praying and talking and praying and talking. If you had 24 hours and you needed to get things out to your disciples, you would probably talk and pray and talk and pray and talk and pray a lot, right? So we're going to jump in to John chapter 13, starting in verse 1. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Okay. Actually, let me just continue reading. I need to read verse 2 too. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. All right. So I want to give you a little backdrop to what's happening in this meal, okay? So to do that, first, we just need to jump to Luke chapter 22, verse 24. This is a sentence about what was happening at the meal in John chapter 13. A dispute also arose among them, this is disciples, as to which of them was considered to be the greatest. Okay, so last 24 hours, this is the beginning of it, and the disciples are in argument about who's the greatest. And then if you looked at John chapter 13, verse 2, what happens? The devil prompts Judas to betray Jesus. So Judas is in this process, and the enemy helps compel him forward. Okay, last 24 hours of Jesus' life, all his disciples are arguing over who's the greatest, and one of them wants to stab him in the back. Right? Get rid of him. Side note here, for any of you who are parents, or any of you who have ever had to lead anything, Jesus is perfect. He spent 3 years being absolutely perfect, leading these men. And after 3 years, all they want to do is argue over who's the greatest and betray him. So have a little grace on yourself as a parent if things aren't going well, because you're not perfect. And a perfect Jesus just couldn't get humans to get it together, right? That there's just, at this moment, something dramatic has to happen for that to happen, okay? So, this is what Jesus is facing when we pick up the story, is people are arguing over who's the greatest, and Judas is beginning to try to figure out how to leave so he can betray Jesus. Verse 3. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet. Drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him, he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean, and you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not every one was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for this is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." All right, so let's talk about the disciples for a minute. And let's talk about self-image. I'm going to open the floor here. What do you think the disciples actually thought about themselves? As you read the text, what do you think their self-image was? What did they believe? What was their story?
They were
They were the elite. Yeah. The chosen. I mean, Jesus raised Lazarus. He's riding into Jerusalem. People are going, Hosanna, Hosanna, save us. Like, there's a ton of people here. Revolution could happen. We're the elite. Very good. Any other thoughts about what they might have believed about themselves? They're important. They're all in. Yeah, they're all in. I like that one. Anything else? Say it again. Yes, they are fighting among themselves. Yes. They think they're like Jesus. Yeah. Oh, that's very good. Yeah. Very good. Anyone? Others? I think all of those are really good. So, what do you think, as you look at this, what kind of story, what happens when you think you are elite? When you think you are God? What happens to you? Anything happen to you when you think you're those things? Arrogance? You become very arrogant. You look around at who's beneath you. Yeah. You don't think anything bad can happen to you? I like that. You start trying to do things only God can do. I like this. That's really good. I think what happens in the arrogance and all of that is what you become very myopic. So these guys don't have servants, but who is supposed to wash your feet? The servants. When you come in, the servants wash your feet. So if there are no servants, who's supposed to be washing whose feet? The lowest, the disciples. They're supposed to be washing each other's feet. Right? What happens when you begin to do all the things that you guys said is that you are unable to see one another and one another's needs because it becomes all about you. Right? Now, what's beautiful here is that Jesus doesn't give them a lecture. I love the way John writes this. Jesus, in shorthand, it's like Jesus knew he was the best and the greatest. Right? So they're having an argument over who's the greatest, and Jesus internally knows, I am the greatest. And at that moment that he's like, I am the greatest, I am the greatest, he gets up and begins to wash everybody's feet. And he gets to Peter, and Peter's like, oh no, you can't do this. And he's like, well, then you can't have any part with me. And he's like, wash all of me. And I love what Jesus, there's a lot happening here theologically, but the thing you don't want to miss is Jesus is like, I need to wash your feet. You got to let me do it. Right? That's the important thing. To be part of me, you need to let me serve you. To be part of me, you're going to have to be vulnerable. Now, let's just rewind back to my story. There's that moment when, 26-year-old Eric is going to have to go up in front and have his feet washed in front of a bunch of 18-year-olds, and he's going to have, exposed, and they're going to see his ingrown toenail. Oh, gee whiz. Poor Eric. Right? But what am I need to control my image, right? Because image is everything. And if I let go and let people see me, then I'm out of control. I'm vulnerable. So what do? I take control and I run away. And I go hide in the bathroom. Right? I take off to the bathroom. Because image is everything. Right? What Jesus is doing here in this powerful way is deconstructing what the disciples think being a disciple is. Because they think it's power, and Jesus is saying, no. The greatest person serves people. But then what I love what he says in the last verse 17, he says, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. You will not be blessed if you argue over who's the greatest. But if you want to be named by me, because this is what blessing is to be named by someone, be known by someone, and to be called out or given position by someone. Blessing gives someone a position. It says, I know who you are. You are special to me. So that's all they were really wanting, is we need to figure out how we can be the most specialist with Jesus. And Jesus is saying, you want to be the most specialist? Well, then you have to do like I have. You need to wash the feet of one another. Now, I've been a pastor for a very long time, and people ask me all the time, well, could you tell me a book? I need a book on parenting. Do you recommend a book on parenting? Do you recommend a book on marriage? Do you recommend a book on pre-marriage? Do you recommend a book on X, Y, and Z? And I used to be like, I'm not going to tell you a book. That's silliness. I've now started to be a little bit more humble, and I'll give you a book. But ultimately, what I want to say is the book is the Bible. And in fact, John chapter 13 is probably one of the best chapters on how to be married, on how to parent, on how to be a good neighbor, how to be a good friend, and how to be a good child, an employee. All those things are wrapped up in John chapter 13. But we just don't want to do it because it's too scary. Right? It's too much. And we just want people to give us the basic instructions. The problem is that people write books and books and books trying to explain what's in the Bible, and none of them change us because we just won't go back and look at this. So let me just offer you something really quickly. In your marriage, in your parenting, if you want to be an effective spouse, kid, parent, then you're going to have to become someone who humbles themselves and washes people's feet. But here's what's interesting. Jesus does not do that in the context of everything working out okay. He, in fact, enters into relationship with people who are arguing about who's the greatest, and he washes the feet of a person who is going to betray him. So the call, if you want to step in and have a healthy marriage, you step in with your wife or your husband even when they're not emotionally offering you what you want or anything else. Right? The way of Jesus, if you want to be blessed in what you're doing and to know him and have position, is to wash the feet. Metaphorically, or maybe literally, but metaphorically, of the people around you. Which means that you have to open your eyes to the need. Right? The disciples had a need. Their feet needed to be cleaned. No one was doing it. Your wife has a need. Your kids have a need. Your husband has a need. And Jesus is inviting you to step into those things. We can talk about that a little bit more later. The second section you heard read by Trizia, starting in verse 18. So I'm not going to read it, but I want to just offer you a quick commentary. This moment with Jesus and Judas is probably one of the most brutal moments of Jesus' life. That's insane. For 3 years, he's walked with this man. He's known this man is going to betray him. And this is the moment where he's like, okay, you need to do it. It's time, to get off the toilet, so to speak, and betray me. It's time to move on because I have things to offer and you have to go. It has to be one of the most brutal moments for Jesus. Just emotionally gut-wrenching as he steps into these last 24 hours of his life. Most of the disciples don't even understand what's happening. And so Judas leaves, and we pick up our story in John chapter 13, verse 31. When he was gone, Jesus said, "Now the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will glorify the Son in himself, and will glorify him at once. My children, I will be with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and just as I told the Jews, so I tell you now, where I am going, you cannot come. A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." Simon Peter asked him, "Lord, where are you going?" Jesus replied, Where I am going, you cannot follow now, but you will follow later." Peter asked, "Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you." Jesus answered, "Will you really lay down your life for me? Very truly I tell you, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times." It's interesting that they're in the Passover festival. What is Passover? Well, Israel, if you go read Exodus, was captive. They were slaves in Egypt. And Moses comes, and what does he say? "Let my people go." And there are 10 plagues, and the 10th plague is the angel of death who comes. And if you don't have blood on your doorpost of a lamb, angel of death will not pass over, and the firstborn of your household will die, all the way down to the animals. And so it's a celebration of Jesus, or God, freeing the Israelites, and they're freed into the desert. And guess what they're given in the desert? The law. And during the Passover festival, Jesus offers a new law. It's not really new, but it's a new one in the sense that it's unique to him. He says, "A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so that you must love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." Now, I thought about this for a while, and I was like, okay, well, maybe he's talking about from chapter 1 to chapter 12. Like, what are the love things that Jesus did? And he's like, now imitate all of that. So I started looking, and I'm like, okay, well, I mean, there's all these things that John said, that, Jesus came, he came to save us, he called his disciples, he protected them, he fed them, he taught them, he did miracles around them, he gave them important positions, he gave them the Spirit. And I thought, yeah, that may be kind of what he's talking about, but I actually think it's all in this chapter. When Jesus says, "Love the way I have loved," he's saying, I just modeled what it looks like to be a disciple. And I want you to build that image. If you say you're a disciple, then you are someone who washes people's feet. You are someone who leads by serving. That's what love is that you lay your life down to care for someone else. I need some help I've lost there we go. So here's the beauty about an environment of love. In an environment of love, we can start letting go of control, saying no to addiction, and growing in Christ-likeness effectively. Let me just repeat that. In an environment of love, we can start letting go of control, saying no to addiction, and growing in Christ-likeness effectiveness. I think why Jesus is saying you need to love one another, and this is how the world is going to know who I am, is that the only place where transformation happens is in a place where love is the predominant ethic. And when love is defined by looking to the other person and serving them. So that we understand who we are as people who look to the other person and serve them. Transformation begins to happen there. Now, why was Jesus able to do this? Why was he able, while his disciples argued, while Judas betrayed him, to get up and wash the feet of his disciples? Why was he able to do it? Because he did not entrust himself to them, for he knew all people. This is John chapter 2, verse 24. Jesus did not ask the disciples or Judas to tell him who he was. That's really important. I said this last week. I'm going to say it this week. When I was sitting up there, when I was running away from having my feet washed, the reason I was afraid of that was I was entrusting who I am to all those immature college students. I wanted them to tell me who I was, not Jesus to tell me who I am. Because if Jesus tells me who I am, then this whole scene is funny and I can truly appreciate what my mentor was trying to do, my poor mentor, right? And care for me and honor me, right? I could choose to step in to vulnerability if I don't entrust myself. That doesn't mean I don't treasure what you say about me or think about me. That's fine. But I don't let you define me, because the only one that gets to define me is Jesus. But because image is everything, right? And because we go around and allow other people to image us, right? To be the mirror. We struggle to let go of control. We struggle to say no to our addictions, to the things that we think we need to make life work. And it makes us very stunted people in our spiritual growth. And so, what I'd like to do today is bring you back to this question. Because I think it's so key for you and I to live in the identity that Jesus has given us and to walk in the way of Jesus. And so I want to ask this question again. What part of your self-image, what you've constructed, the stories you've put on your self-image, is Jesus inviting you to rethink and deconstruct today? What is he inviting you to let go of? I purposely chose to make this sermon short so that we can have a 15-minute conversation about it. So, I'm going to open it up. Mark's going to run around, and you can ask me questions if you feel like some things need to be clarified. But I really want us to just kind of talk a little bit about what God might be inviting us to let go of. So, Danielle.
I just did a quick prayer, and the thing that came to me, which I admit I don't want to let go of, is maybe being a fishing family.
Letting go of being a fishing family. Yeah, it's an identity. So, anyone else want?
Something that I've recently acknowledged is a big idol for me is avoidance. Just avoiding different things that need to happen. And it's like, well, where do I go instead of to God when I need something or when I need to do something is like, oh, I'm going to avoidance. I'm just not really sure what part of my identity that's coming out of. So that's something that I'm looking into.
Being someone that has to solve all of my problems myself.
I think what's good is that you're making a statement, like, I am someone who needs to avoid, like, I am someone who needs to solve all my own problems. That is part of the self-image that's being built. And as you let go of a little bit, I think Jesus will start revealing the next spot. But that's cool. Anyone else?
I was just thinking about how I feel like a lot of times a part of our, the things that become our self-image are our strengths and what we are. It's not just random, like, sinful stuff out of the blue.
Sure.
And rethinking or deconstructing them, my experience of that has been that it's actually, in the end, it's freeing because it's letting go. Like, I think what you're talking about here is not that, it's necessarily always a bad choice. It's just a you choice all the time. Like,
yes.
Because it's your self-image, you run to that.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it just becomes habit. People tell you, like you said, oh, you're this. And after a while, you just do it all the time. And you don't think, oh, wait a minute. How do I first be the person who obeys first, listens first to God? Mm-hmm. Just like kind of in the Old Testament with the kings trying to fight, the kings of Israel trying to do their fights. They were good at it, but God always wanted them to talk to him first. Mm-hmm. Should we do this? Should we not? Should we go up against so-and-so? And sometimes they would have epic failures, because they didn't listen, because God was like, no, I'm giving you over because you didn't listen first. So anyway, that's my thought.
No, I like that.
It's not like, necessarily evil things that you never do again, but how do you submit them to God?
Yeah. Well, and I think even just my, silly introverted, extroverted thing, we're all either introverted or extroverted. We have these things that are part of who we are, but are they the thing that we treasure and like say, I have to have this to be okay. I have to, not talk to people. That's when it becomes a self-image that's focused on me and not on others. Yeah. Anybody else? Any other? Jesse, and we'll hit Karen, and then we'll hit Jesse.
So, so what I'm hearing you say, Emily, is like deconstructing something would be taking the thing that's like become a burden, maybe, and then giving it to God to do what he wants with it. Like, I can't solve this. So, for me, one of the struggles I've had really my whole life, and it kind of keeps on coming back, so I don't think it's going to go away, is situations where I'm rejected or misinterpreted or overlooked. There's some pretty key relationships that have shaken out that way. And also as a teacher, I get that a lot. Mm-hmm. So I don't think I can avoid situations where I'm rejected, misinterpreted, or overlooked. Mm-mm. I can't control it.
Right.
I could become obsessive, addicted to ruminating over how can I avoid this situation, right? Rather than just, try to solve it, I can just lean into it and talk to Jesus about it, right?
Yeah.
Jesus, you're here with me in this situation where I'm feeling rejected, dismissed, misinterpreted, overlooked.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do with me with this? Right? That sort of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think also, I think not allowing those things to become identity statements.
Right.
I am someone who is overlooked. Because then when you say,
this is always going to happen.
This will always happen.
This is always going to happen. Mm-hmm. Right.
Here's why I'm overlooked, and then you build a whole story about it. And then that story becomes a very powerful way of controlling who you are and the choices you have.
Something that has occurred to me several times is that I think this could be a generational thing that I've just kind of, it's my turn to fight this.
Sure.
So it's not just about me, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So starting to see it is not just about me. There's a bigger story, and this is just my chapter in it.
That's good. Thanks, Karen.
Okay.
Jesse had his hand up.
I think being a person who is kind of stuck and not very driven, lack of ambition, I think that's become a big part of who I see myself as. Mm. And I can see it very limiting in me seeing what choices are or options I have to make moves in my life. Yeah.
Thanks, Jess. Thank you. Anybody else? Got a few more minutes. Oh, sorry. I'm staring over here.
This is just really precious to hold. And so I just want to thank everyone who's shared. And I really want to be good. I want to be good enough. I want to be a good enough mom, a good enough dog owner, and No, like we were on a walk this morning and our dog goes nuts when he sees another dog, like to the point that you're like, are you going to strangle yourself? And Corey looked at me and he goes, our dog's behavior is not a reflection of you as a dog owner. And I just was like, because it's so embarrassing. But I feel Jesus inviting me into these spaces of appearing bad. Like, and I think that was a verse from, John 12. No, I can't remember the verse, but I really resonate with like not entrusting yourself. Like I don't need to entrust. I do crazy stuff. Like I want my dog to like me. I give it treats just for like not biting me. Like I do it with my kids too. I'm like, do you like me? And I need to let that go. I need to let my dog not like me, my kids not like me. I need to like step into being like Jesus. I'm like, come on guys, like, and wash my children's feet and my dog's feet. And yeah.
Thank you, Colin. Rod.
I think part of my image as a writer is that I never finish anything. And so I have all these partial pieces of books and all kind. And just this last week, Andy Littleton and I finished writing our book that we're writing together about discipleship. And my immediate thing was I could never have done this without Andy doing this bulk of this work. And I think I'm being invited to reject that image of the guy who can never finish anything.
That's so cool. Thank you, Rod. Isaac?
I was wondering if the self-image is also the stuff that our skills, the things we're good at.
Yeah.
If we're invited to rethink those, deconstruct those, maybe in the idea that we're more than one thing, more than, like, I don't know exactly, but Jesus is defining us by something more than the things we drop the ball on and on the things we excel in.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, I think part of your image, the one that you've carefully constructed, can be that I'm a really good musician. And that's who I am. And I'm good at what I do. And that limits your options. It limits your ability to see other people, like when it becomes about you. Right? Or it could be any other. I mean, I know you're a musician, so I said that, but it could be any other list of skills. Right? When that becomes who you are. So, Danielle.
I kind of hear some of us talking about things we're good at and things that aren't necessarily bad, kind of like what Emily was saying. And I was just thinking that, it's not as necessarily, like she said, that you would never do that thing again, but is it more about where's your praise and honor going in that? Mm-hmm. Where's your idol you? Are you giving it to God? Are you saying, God, I'll do it or not do it and letting go? Or are you saying, I have to do this? Like, I will do this. I will do this thing that I'm really good at and I don't want to let it go. Right. And so right in there, it's not necessarily the action that's bad. It's the thought process of I will. It's the demand. It's the I'm in charge, God, not you.
Right.
And I'm not even going to honor you when I do it. It's about me.
Yeah.
So it's not even, like, I guess what's neat about thinking about that is those things can be redeemed. Like, that is something that you can say, Jesus, this is what I do, but I won't do it anymore if you don't want me to. And then seeing what he does instead and letting, like, opening with an open hand.
Right. Yeah. And I think, so just to close, I think what happens is that we spend time naming ourselves and telling ourselves where we belong and telling ourselves who we're supposed to be. And when we step into what Jesus is inviting us into, all that we are comes to bear on that, but he's the one who gets to name us. And he's the one who gets to tell us who we are, not us. And I think that's what just kind of changes the perspective on what we're good at and what we have and who we are. So I think that's what he was inviting his disciples into, because here they are, they've got to bring the gospel to the world, and they're fighting over who's the greatest. And in order for the gospel to go forward, he needs a people who live in love and who lay their life down for people. So with that thought, let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you for this community, both morning and evening. It's been some really, really rich things that you've been inviting us to step into. And I ask that you give us the courage to do it, and that we could hold on to you and to the identity that you give us, and that we could really rest in the way you have created us and really treasure the opportunity to walk with you and serve you. So I ask all of that in your holy name, Jesus. Amen.